Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Reality Check Podcast. I'm Carlos, joined by Marcus, Raul, Harrison, and our special guest, Anthony Smith. Now, the topic of tonight, the title is Anthony Smith on repetitive traumatic brain injuries amongst SWCC operators. And I will soon pass the gavel over to Marcus, and he will go ahead and introduce Anthony and let you guys know what SWCC means and the rest. Marcus, take it away.
Okay. So my name is Marcus. I'm introducing Michael Anthony Smith. He served in the military, U.S. Navy, 1986 to 2010. Became a SWCC operator in 1996. SWCC stands for Special Warfare Combatant Crewman. He made at least 8 6-month deployments in several flyaways. Logged in at least 12,000 hours of fast boat time, where the boats can go up to 65 miles per hour, and the body can experience at least 125 Gs. Uh, Anthony got numerous degrees, got an associate's in science in applied science with Vincennes University, a BA in workforce education and training and development through Southern Illinois University, a master's in organizational leadership through Chapman. And he's done numerous works, one as a port engineer with the U.S. Marine on 12-meter ribs, complex site supervisor with SOC USA, was a shooting instructor with Lynx Global Solution, and a site lead with RMGS. And at one point, you auditioned as a Chippendale dancer. Is that correct?
Yeah,
I'm just joking.
I think it was 30 years ago. So
No, it's but that's one of the things you would say as a dirty boat guy to a girl at a bar. One of the numerous job things, like, I worked as a Chippendale dancer. This is an important topic for everybody. What? Oh, it's a dog? Okay. So this is a very important topic for everybody here. It's been known as a silent epidemic in relationship to TBIs. In sports, it wasn't really talked about until a number of football players committed suicide, mainly like Junior Seau, Andre Waters, and Aaron Hernandez. In the military, it wasn't as known, especially among the special operations community, until like a number of at least 2 SEALs who committed suicide. And when they committed suicide, they part of their request was to have their brains examined. And once they did, they found a correlation with a repetitive blast exposure that was akin to as much as damage from like what football players go through. Okay, so now we're segueing to where it's even a lesser known topic is with the SWCC community. So without further ado, we'll field you some questions. It's very normal. One question is, what is repetitive TBI? What is whiplash-associated disorder? And what is chronic traumatic encephalopathy? Sorry if I mispronounced it.
Encephalopathy?
Encephalopathy.
Encephalopathy, yes.
Yeah. Repetitive TBI is, for us as SWCC operators, and I just want to throw this out there as well. It's not just SWCC operators, but I'm talking with Coast Guard operators, U.S. Navy Riverine, special boat service guys over in Great Britain, Australian guys, Canadian. But we're on boats. These boats go 50, 60 miles an hour. They slam in the waves every 1 to 5 seconds. Every time they hit a wave, there's an impact that occurs. And these impacts can be 2, 10, 15, 25 Gs. We've had instances where they're over 60 Gs. And if you log that many impacts in over an hour, that's about 3,600 impacts if you're looking at 1 second. And then if you're an operator that's out there for 5, 10, 15,000 hours or even more, you're talking about anywhere from 10 to 50 million impacts on these boats. And there's a cumulative G-force load that happens when you're out there taking 2Gs, or 10Gs, whatever the case is, to where it loads up to over millions of G-force, a G-force load on your brain tissue. So unfortunately, that type of injury has not been seen in the NFL. It's not been seen in any type of sport. We're taking, from what researchers are telling me that I work with, they're saying we take up to 7 times the G-force load on our brains in one SWCC deployment as an NFL player that had 20 years in the NFL and died of severe CTE. So a guy that did 5 deployments could have up to 50 times the amount of repetitive G-force load on their brain tissue as opposed to an NFL player. So that's basically what repetitive TBI is. Whiplash associated disorder is when we're on a boat and we're slamming into a wave, we're jumping a wave. It's causing a whiplash mechanism on our head and our neck, and we're getting those thousands of times a night, to where we're getting damage to our entire cervical spine, and we're getting damage to the brainstem itself, which leads into all types of autonomic problems down the road when you're 50, 60 years old. CTE is encephalopathy. It is brain degenerative pathology that occurs with repetitive head injury. It's been studied extensively in the NFL, and they've determined that the repetitive nature of impacts to the head causes that degenerative pathology in the brain. Unfortunately, we have had recently one of our operators commit suicide. He shot himself in the chest, and then in the process of having his brain donated to Bethesda, Maryland, they were able to do the autopsy on his brain, and they found level 4 severe CTE in his brain. He was only 44 years old. Was that all of them?
Anthony, a quick question.
Yeah, for the most part. But all right. So
I've got a question mark.
Yeah, we're all.
Anthony,
go ahead.
so you know, these boats are not going to be taken out of service anytime soon, right? I mean, this is a necessary sort of asset that the Navy has,
Correct.
To deliver SEAL team members and other individuals to specific places. What is being done right now in order to sort of lessen the impact on the body? I mean, I seem to recall that there were special seats being developed, with all sorts of, like high-tech shock absorbers and stuff in them. I mean, is there a technological solution to this problem on the boats?
I'm not a boat builder or boat designer, but I do know that in the world of spec war, we've used the same types of hull designs and the same group of individuals or entities that have developed all of our boats in the past. And I know that around the world, there are different boat technologies and seat technologies that are available that could mitigate a lot of the slamming that takes place. But I don't believe that any of those builders or technologies are allowed to be looked at within the spec war realm.
May I comment on that a moment? The shock absorption, Anthony, this is a stretch of an analogy, but as a person that did a lot of mountain biking, typically you have like a 4-inch travel on your rear shock, 3 or 4 inch on your front shock when you have full suspension, right? And you have a frame that pivots, especially if you have a nice bike like I do. But that is for what's called cross country, where you'll encounter some choppiness, some, what we call a technical trail. Now, if you take that bike and you compare it to a downhill mountain bike, it's 8-inch, 9-inch, 10-inch travel. If you were to take the runs that those downhillers take on a cross country bike, you'd have to go back and retrace the trail to find your kidneys. so to speak. So obviously, it's a if that is such a stark requirement of difference in suspension for something like just biking. The other thing I wanted to ask is, I remember that in NASCAR, they were, if I'm not mistaken, I'm no NASCAR expert, but they were developing for the whiplash some kind of a harness or something. You would think at the very least that would be at least a good start.
I've actually tried on a robotic system on my legs that minimizes it, shock and that type of thing. And there's suspension seats. Dr. Ullman out of Sweden makes those, and they're pretty good seats. They definitely mitigate shock and slamming effects. The issue isn't whether it's 50 G's or 30 G's or even 20 G's. The issue is if you're taking 10 G's or 6 G's and you're taking them millions of times, let's just say 2 10G impacts, one and then another, and now that's 20 G's cumulative. So if I take another 10 G's and another 10 G's and another 10 G's and I do that a million times, it's 10 million cumulative G forces on my brain, on my brain tissue. It's a cumulative G force load that's causing diffuse axonal injury in the brain tissue.
And by the way, the key issue of what you just said, as a person with a healthcare background, the human body is amazing in its ability to repair itself. However, the ability of the human body to repair itself requires that the positive factor is eliminated. Obviously, it cannot be eliminated when it's a repetitive trauma.
Well, in the NFL, I think I don't know the numbers without looking at the data, but you're probably looking at 100 or 200,000 cumulative G force load on the brain of an NFL player after 20 years, and we're exceeding that by 10, 20 million or whatever it might be. So it's far beyond any realm of what we've seen in any contact sport ever before.
Yeah, and unlike Tua Tagovailoa, who's got a skull made of baccarat crystal, you guys don't get pulled for a couple of games. You don't get put on IR.
No, that's the unfortunate thing, is because you could be out there for 8 hours slamming into bad seas at high speeds. And then for us, back in my time, we would go out there the next day and do the same thing. I did one trip where we tracked 1,700 miles in 5 days. So the brain doesn't have time to repair itself. It doesn't have time to heal.
Thank you, Anthony. Marcus, please continue.
Yeah, well, going back to about that, like with the suicides, the ones who donated their brains for study, their commonality is they were breachers. And what was discovered is that as a breacher, you're close to the blast zone. Even though you're perpendicular, they call that brisance, the kinetic energy. And if you watch like a stop motion footage of energy traveling, you'll see like a ripple effect, and it just goes in and goes through the body like this. And as a breacher, if you're a tier 1 or tier 2, you're probably doing like 2 or 3 operations a night for like 6 months. But what they notice in the autopsy is that the brisance, the kinetic energy, it creates micro tears in the brain, and you're not allowing it to heal. And for SWCC, going through 30, an average is 3,600 impacts an hour. It's like a salt shaker. You're rattling the brain. It's creating micro tears. And what I notice is like you provide studies from like 94, 95, 96, and they're kind of like hovering over like the talking points about like the injuries, but they're kind of missing the big picture. They're talking about like disorientation, nausea, and whatnot, but that's head related. And we're talking about like mechanical shock studies. And the thing is, it's like you're dealing with smart people, but they missed the big elephant in the room, and that's what the brain is going through. And a good two examples would be shaking a baby. Shaking baby syndrome. You shake it
Right.
hard enough, you could kill the baby or do brain damage. Another aspect is what you see with mixed martial artists. I've seen a footage where this guy's talking, and 4 years later, he can't even make a coherent statement. They
Right.
call it punch drunk for a reason for boxers and
Ali.
MMA fighters. So
And would there be a connection with
yeah, I just had to
Parkinson's?
make a comment.
Would that not increase the risk of Parkinson's later in life, as it did with Ali? Just saying.
I know guys with dementia. I know guys who have had spinal taps at TBI clinics, and they were told they had CTE presumptively. I know one guy whose brain is shrinking. So it's prevalent in the guys that are late 50s, early 60s, where we're seeing either Parkinson's or dementia, or they're actually being told that they have CTE based on all of the experiences and things in their past, based on their symptomology, and actually going to TBI clinics.
Anthony, how often do special boat operators get to undergo MRIs or CAT scans so that while they're still healthy, they can look into the brain and assess if there's been any damage, rather than waiting for these tragic cases where someone takes his own life and then they have a brain to work with. But with the technology we have now, we should be able to see that, in a live, healthy human being. What I'm asking, I guess, is the VA or just the military generally, are they providing the funding for guys in your line of work to get regular CAT scans or to get regular MRIs so that they can detect this early?
I've never had a brain scan through the VA system. I do know, or from my understanding, a DTI MRI can actually detect in the brain tissue. It'll show where you've had concussions in your brain, as far as the pathology in the brain tissue. I've never had a DTI MRI, and I've had 2 brain MRIs in my lifetime, and both of them, the results were I had a beautiful, healthy brain. And that's the unfortunate thing a lot of times with this is most of us have normal brain scans.
Okay.
But like I said, I don't know many guys, if any of that, have actually had a DTI MRI.
See, that should be mandatory. And then
Yeah.
if they pick something up, they
All
can.
right, Anthony, you've made this a personal mission of yours. You've taken up the mantle. What?
Oh yeah, I have.
So tell me about your personal exposure, journey, experience, and realization with TBI.
Oh well, when I got out of SWCC school, I went to Boat Team 12 at the end of '96, and I stayed there for 8 years or so. I was on Mark 5s, did multiple deployments. 9/11 happened. We deployed immediately within a couple of weeks, and we went up to the NAG. Basically, we were up there for almost 5 months. There was a giant group or big footprint of naval special warfare, and we just spent every night taking down everything that came out of Iraq. When I got back off that deployment, I went into training department. I was in training department for about 2 years, and then I was getting ready to rotate back into deployment cycle again, and then I had a grand mal seizure. And when I had the grand mal seizure, I couldn't really associate it to any causation. But that caused, your typical types of TBI problems, TBI symptoms. out of body experiences, anxiety, depression, those type of things. Unfortunately, I went through a med board, fought the med board, stayed in, retired in 2010. All of those things that happened to me from the seizure on down the line were never associated with a traumatic brain injury. So even after I retired from the military, I was never diagnosed with a traumatic brain injury and never got a rating for it.
Do you think that was a misdiagnosis based on lack of inability, or do you think it was agenda-driven? I know this is kind of going out on a limb.
No, in 2004, 2005, we had no understanding of wave slamming, subconcussive impacts. We didn't know what it was doing to our brains at the time. And even when I retired in 2010, we still didn't have an understanding of it. And around 2015 is when they started realizing what it was doing to SWCC brains in particular, and guys started going to NICO and getting evaluation for traumatic brain injury. So it was probably 2019 when I had a lot of issues that I was asking questions about with multiple SWCC operators that I knew that were retired, and that's when the whole issue of wave slamming and that causing subconcussive impacts, that's when it became known to me.
Well, it's 10 years. So basically anyone that came up with it in the last 10 years, they should know. It's no longer, a mystery.
It's not a mystery now, because when I found out about it, I gathered all the information. I went to a polytrauma clinic at the Biloxi VA where I'm at, and they basically laughed at me and told me I didn't have any problems related to traumatic brain injury that were service connected. So that kind of infuriated me to the point where I went to Tulane's TBI clinic, and that's where I got all the proper diagnoses and those types of things. So I filed more claims, still was denied, and that's when I kind of made it my own mission about myself in the very beginning, because I was just kind of pissed off about the whole thing. But then I realized that when I went to Tulane, I told Dr. Stewart there, I'm like, hey, they saw me and we did our brief, and I told them, look, all the issues that I have, I could give you 1,000 guys, probably even more than that have the same problem as I do. I said every guy that was on fast boats in my community has this problem. And I convinced Tulane to do research on SWCC operators. So from that point forward, I started contacting every SWCC operator that I knew online and giving them the contact information to Tulane so that they could go to the TBI clinic in Tulane. And from that point forward is when I started doing research, when I started doing online surveys, and when I started publishing all the things that I publish and doing the research that I'm doing.
Have you guys formed groups? People with similar pathology, similar diagnoses tend to form either support groups or actually advocacy groups. Is there such a group for RTBI among SWCC operators?
I've formed a couple of groups on Facebook for SWCC TBI, and then I formed a separate one for fast boat operators in general. So in that one, there's SWCC, SEAL, Coast Guard, Riverine, Australians. There's people from multiple boat communities.
Could you talk a little bit, Anthony, about some of the therapies? You mentioned hyperbaric chambers. What's some of the progress they're making now in the medical community toward treating TBI?
Well, for hyperbaric oxygen therapy, I found out about that a couple of years ago and tried everything I could to actually get to treatment, and always kind of fell short with it. But through some of the research projects that I'm involved with, I had a neurosurgeon out of Pittsburgh connect me with a guy that has a TBI or a HBOC clinic, and we got connected, and we kind of made a pact together where we're working together. So I've been actively sending SWCC operators to get HBOC treatment along with transcranial magnetic stimulation, TMS. So we've had probably 10 guys go up so far, including myself. Most of us got 60 hours of HBOT with 30 sessions of TMS. A couple of guys actually got over 100 hours of HBOT. And with HBOT rewires the brain, neuroplasticity. It rejuvenates the mitochondria, which is kind of like the supercell in the brain, and it repairs a lot of issues with brain tissue. So it rejuvenates brain tissue, it rejuvenates those connections. It does a lot of. I mean, I'd have to look at it and kind of look at the literature to explain it all to you, but it definitely it just basically rewires the brain. And if you go through 60, 80, 100 hours of it, when you leave there, you're gonna have a different functioning brain with much better cognitive functioning, which is what it did for me.
And will the VA cover that for you?
There's a lot of legislation right now for this to be covered. I think there's 13 or 14 states where it's already been approved. But for me to go to the VA and get 60 hours, I'm not going to be able to do that, or 80 hours or 100 hours, which for our type of brain pathology, we need more than the standard 20 hours or even 40 hours. We need 60, 80, or even 100 hours of HBOT for it to actually do what it needs to do in our brain.
Anthony, what would it take as far as legislative action for that to be not even a debatable point, for that to be made available to all you guys?
I've been communicating with the Veterans Affairs House Committee for Veterans Affairs for a few months. I use AI quite a bit for a lot of my research, so I kind of put all this through an AI platform and made a list of things that I thought that we needed to do for legislation. One of them, it has to be, TBI has to be primary presumptive for fast boat wave slamming. And then when you look at TBI from our particular type of injury, there's a list of 30 to 40 comorbid secondary factors like anxiety, depression, insomnia, sleep apnea, endocrine dysfunction, vestibular dysfunction, central processing disorder. There's a long list of things that happen secondarily from traumatic brain injury.
For our listeners, I'm sorry, real quick, for viewers who may not be familiar with what the term vestibular means, it means the inner ear, the semicircular canals. In other words, vertigo. Picture yourself like you're on the worst seasick boat trip in your life and you're puking your guts out and you want to die, except you're sitting in a chair like I am and you feel like that. That's a vestibular disorder.
Anthony, a quick question here for you. I was looking up this fellow, Dr. Gregory Stewart at the Tulane University Center for Brain Health. So if somebody's watching this program and is kind of like hearing about this for the first time, thinks that, that they might be, a candidate for this, what's the first step? I mean, where do they go? Do they go to Tulane University Center for Brain Health? Do they go to the VA? Do they contact you? I mean, what's the first funnel, if you will, where people should go to start the process of understanding whether or not they have this and what kind of treatments they can seek out?
Avalon Action Alliance, make sure I say this correct. Avalon Action Alliance has a website, and if you get on that website, there's a button on there where you can click to start your treatment journey type thing. But they have 6 TBI clinics in the country. Tulane used to be their 7th one, but they're not working together anymore at the moment. But there's 6 TBI clinics that you can go to, and basically what they do is they do a 3-day assessment on you where they do the vestibular, ocular, hearing. You talk to psychologists. You do all the different neuropsych testing. They do blood work. They do just a normal. They do 8, 16, 20, almost 24 hours of testing, just like you would get if you went to NICO. And then from that, they can diagnose you with a multitude of different things that are primarily TBI, and then secondary, which might be PTSD, anxiety, depression, whatever all of those things might be. But if they will diagnose you, they will give you, this is what we believe is wrong with you. But then they will set you up with doctors at the VA, at your local VA, and that will help you get to specialty clinics where you can go and you can have all of these different things taken care of, seen by professionals. So
Anthony, I'd never heard of this. I'm looking at the website right now, avalonactionalliance.org. avalonactionalliance.org. This is fantastic, man. I'd never heard of this before. I mean, and I thought I knew a lot about TBI and PTSD and stuff. This is the first time I've even come across this website. So
yeah,
we need to put the word out there about these folks.
Anthony, pardon me, when you're first, when it's detected, when it's established and it's known that a naval officer or a SWCC operator has that, or a SWCC crew for that matter, are they removed? Are they taken from that type of duty, that activity?
no. There has to be a rotation where you have sea duty, shore duty, or you do deployments, you do office jobs. There's a multitude of things you can do. But if you have a situation like mine where I had a seizure, I was removed from deployment status. I never deployed again because of it, which is probably a great thing because I probably would have done another 4 or 5 deployments, and I'd probably be a vegetable right now sitting in a corner because it would have caused a lot more damage. So I guess it was a blessing in disguise in many ways.
Hey, by the way, I'm looking here now at the Avalon website.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, man, I am very impressed with the individuals involved in this. I'm seeing Bernie Marcus. Bernie Marcus is one of the co-founders of Home Depot. This guy's got to be like well in his 80s or 90s, and he's still out there moving the needle, quite frankly. I'm seeing Gary Sinise involved. I'm seeing Mark Esper, who I know, who is the Secretary of the Army. Flo Groberg, a Medal of Honor recipient on the board. I mean, this is a really powerful group, man. I mean, this is, we need to sort of talk more about this, raise the visibility of this group.
100%. That's one of my objectives, is to get fast boat operators to those TBI clinics. So in all the groups that I communicate, everything that I'm communicating, this is one of the things that I tell them. I send them the link. I tell them all the different clinics, how to get in contact with them. And I've sent guys over to UNC Thrive, and I've helped send over 100 guys to Tulane. And there's other guys that have gone to Colorado and other places. So I can't really track who's gone where, but I know there's a lot more than 100. It's probably a lot more than that. But
How much, Anthony? How much of those
So
SWCCs?
with your injury with TBI,
what's that?
You're just gonna ask how much have they evolved? I mean, a SWCC is today's swift boat, basically, is it not?
It is. It's, from the early 90s when they formalized the school to the modern SWCC now, they have their first 5 weeks, I believe, in basic crewman training, where they do the tour at the end of it, which is 72 hours of just staying awake, moving, and being under stress the whole time, and kind of weeding out guys and that type of thing. But I think it's 7 or 8 months long. It's pretty extensive now between BCT and CQT.
I was just curious to how many models of the SWCC have evolved. Was there like a prototype, then another model, like a TBM, TBF, like that? That's what I meant.
You talking about the boats?
Yes, the boats themselves.
From the old river boats, now in the modern day, they're using cigarette type boats, a little over 40 feet long, that go pretty fast, and and they go through some rough seas. They're like a smaller version of the Mark V, which is what I was on back in the late 90s, early 2000s, that time frame. So they got smaller, faster boats, in my opinion. Probably just getting guys to brain damage a lot faster than what we did.
So they've gotten faster, which is good for one sense. It's faster, but it's not fast, not good in that it accelerates the damage, the rate of damage.
In my personal opinion, yes. It's just, I think it's worse now.
With your injuries, does it? Yeah. So with your injuries, does it seem like it gets worse over time, and does it manifest differently as you get older by like a decade, like things happen in your 40s, and now that you're in your 50s, other things kind of pop up.
Well, in my 40s, I really didn't notice any cognitive issues. I was still running. I was still able to run. I was still doing a lot of things I did when I was active duty. By the time I hit 50, it was as if I hit a brick wall, and the cognitive decline. I noticed it at that point. To date, I have 31 in-plate fractures. So that's basically my entire spine. I have 3 wedge fractures, which is T4, T5, and T8. They're all 50% gone. So I'm 2 inches shorter. And my spinal degenerative process gets worse every year. I'm almost 59 now. When I was 50, I didn't really see the spinal problems the way that I do now. It's been progressively gotten worse. The brain's the same way. So guys that are getting out in their 50s, they're really starting to see the cognitive changes, and wanting and needing to go to a TBI clinic, wanting and needing to get help. 55 and 60 is where we really see the differences.
How many years did you log in as on a SWCC?
I was a SWCC for 14 years, and I was in the fleet for 10 years. So I did my first 10 years as a fleet bosun mate, and then I went to SWCC school. And I spent my last 14 years in the Navy as a SWCC operator. And had I not had the seizure, and had I not been through the medical board, my end goal was to make Master Chief and stay in the Navy for 30 years, and that's what I would have done.
I think one thing that going forward, there should be like more baseline studies about people who've gone through fast boat in particular, and
Right.
I mean, and and I'll give you an example that should be pursued. Like one of my friends got a heart attack. She didn't know she had a heart attack. She was complaining that she was anxious, and she was almost feeling like she was having a panic attack. When she went to the hospital, she got tested, and they told her she's she had a heart attack, and they do an enzyme test, and it's an enzyme that only shows up if you have a heart attack. Okay, so my take is, if the brain is getting shaked up, there's 3 glands here. There's like 40 other glands in the body, and the brain is getting shaked up. It's going through trauma, and a good way to find out if there's any precursors that you've gone through some TBI is to do like maybe like a baseline testing on some enzymes that are given off if you're injured. It's one of those like, we could have do like a Manhattan Project type of work on studies, because like you're looking at PhD students, people going for their masters, professors, they need valid research studies. And
Right.
I can't think of a more nobler pursuit. And if you
Yeah.
get like, call out, hey, TBI is an issue, especially among like the SWCC community and or the fast food operators. And you get like 100 different universities. You're gonna get like 100 different studies, and you're gonna find some pretty good stuff coming out of the woodworks out of that. That's just my 2 cents on it.
Well, right now I'm partnered with some researchers out of Pittsburgh. One's a retired neurosurgeon. We have a study that's in the IRB process at the moment, and we intend to publish it either in JAMA or the New England Journal of Medicine here pretty soon. So that study, what I can tell you is it's pretty devastating what it's going to show in terms of results. It's very devastating. So what I know from I've surveyed over 500 operators over the last 2 years, and all of them had concussion symptoms from wave slamming, and on average they had 30 different medical problems that were secondary to TBI on average. So, and I can give you a long list of different medical problems, like I kind of went through earlier, but all of them have a long list of medical problems. 28% of them were suicidal or had been contemplating suicide at one point. And to date, I've started a new project where I'm looking at the guys that have committed suicide, and I've found 16 guys so far between SWCC, Coast Guard fast boat operators, and riverine, U.S. Navy riverine operators.
You mentioned earlier, Anthony, that list, and one of the secondary effects or related symptoms really caught my attention. You mentioned out-of-body experiences. Would you please, could you elaborate a little bit on that?
When I had the seizure in 2004, I began having a sensation when I would lay down as if I was leaving my body, as if I wasn't no longer inside of my body. It was an out-of-body type of experience. And those kind of proceeded for 2 or 3 years. So I think
you see yourself when you had that experience, this was during sleep or during consciousness?
I was awake.
You were awake. Did you see yourself, like, were you above yourself looking down at yourself?
It wasn't like that. It was just like I was laying down and my conscious mind was separated from my body. It was that type of experience.
The reason I asked that, not to be melodramatic or morbid, but that is sometimes something that happens when a person is, the term is moribund. When a person is nearing death, they can have, and it's not a near-death experience. It's not like you had a crash and you smashed your head and they brought you back, and you looked at the light and didn't walk toward it. Not that kind of thing. But for example, I met a person that we did consulting with, and her dad was very ill, and he was kind of, at his end. She took him to the hospital, and they checked in late at night. He checked right in. And she said the next day she went to visit him, and she said, "How you doing, Dad?" And he says, "Oh, I'm good, honey. This hospital is really something. They've got this terrific coffee shop, and there's this really pretty blonde that works down there at the register, serving coffee and donuts. And then there's this other lounge." And she said, "Oh, that's nice, Dad." This lady knew about those things, so she talked to the nurse, and they said, "Ma'am, he hasn't left his room. He's not wandering around." So he was already wandering around, and 2 or 3 days later, he passed. Thank God you're still with us. I don't think yours was the same kind of out of body.
No, I definitely didn't go and see other things. I was just felt like I was laying in my bed trying to go to sleep, and just as if I had consciously detached from my physical being, that type of thing. So that was kind of a weird experience that happened for a couple of years, actually, before it just kind of went back to normal.
Well, thank God it did.
Yeah, so I had a seizure in 2004, and I haven't had one since then. So I don't have epilepsy or anything like that. So all I can attribute it to is just a lot of wave slamming, a lot of TBI type things, and then it just all coming to a point to where something happened to me neurologically because of it. So
Marcus wants to chime in.
So, two questions. Like, if a person can't afford or doesn't have the in a position to go through like HBOT training, what are the alternative remedies to treat what they're having? And the second part is, has there been any studies on stem cell treatment for TBI and anything neurological?
Stem cell isn't something that I've personally looked into, but through the course of all the research that I've done, I've met a lot of doctors from around the world and talked to them about these things and different modalities of treatment. Stem cell isn't one that we've talked about, but it's definitely something we probably should be talking about. As far as going to the HBOT that I'm getting guys to go to, I have a relationship with the clinic, and so far they've been able to cover the cost for most of these guys that have come up there. My end goal with what I'm doing is to start a nonprofit and where I can just funnel money into treatments and getting guys to, the nonprofit would basically cover the lodging and those types of things where they wouldn't have to come out of pocket for that type of stuff. And the treatment is covered up there. So right now when we're going up there, we have to cover our lodging and of course our food and then travel to go there. So I drove up there when I went. But my end goal is to get to where I could do a nonprofit and I would actually be able to cover those lodging costs, so they wouldn't have to come out of pocket with that either. So.
Have you appeared in any, apart from online, television shows, on any network? I would think more logically, Fox News, Newsmax, OAN. Have you appeared, been interviewed on this topic by any of those outlets?
I've tried to not be interviewed in the past because where I work and what type of work that I do. I mean, it could have implications with that, but I'm mentally moving on at some point and physically as well from what I do now to where I want to go. So no, but I'd be up into it.
Well, they need not get into your whatever your current thing is. I think that could be discussed, with the production. With Raul would know a lot more about that than I would. But
Yeah.
just to emphasize this situation and that it affects, who knows, hundreds, thousands of our troops, and
Yeah.
that it needs to be addressed. And I say that because those are the networks with the big viewers, the big numbers. Especially Newsmax has grown quite a bit actually. Fox kind of lost some, but
Yeah.
that would be, a good outlet to be. Even the other left-leaning networks, I can't imagine would be antagonistic uh, on that topic. They probably have nothing else. They would love to get a dig at our government.
I was the guy behind the New York Times article. I don't know if you got to see that or read it, but through all my online posts that I did with LinkedIn mostly, Dave Phillips reached out to me. I think it was the beginning of 2024, and he was talking about doing a piece on a non-blast TBI, and we just kind of communicated back and forth for 6, 7, 8, 9 months, whatever the case it was, until I really just started bugging the crap out of him, and then he just capitulated and decided he'd go ahead and get the article put together and publish it. And so it made a big splash when that article was published. I mean, there were a lot of us chiefs, senior chiefs, and those types of guys that were part of the interview process. And from my perspective, it was probably at least 95% accurate and true what was said in that article. Although there's been some people that came out and tried to refute some of the things that were said, but we know what happened to us in SWCC. We know what the boats did to us. That article hit the point.
Have you gotten any pushback from the makers of the boats or the chairs, the seats?
Not really, because I'm not pushing for new boats and seats and that type of thing, because I'm mostly concerned about the veterans, the guys that are retired, the former guys that don't have that. When I was in Spec War took care of me. I was under their umbrella, so if there was anything wrong with me, they were going to take care of me. I don't have that umbrella now. All of us that are retired, we don't have that umbrella. So we really
Yeah.
we just have to fend for ourselves. So I'm more focused on us getting this recognized and getting guys to treatment, because that's what's a priority in terms of fixing boats, getting new holes in seats and all of those things. There's 1,000 companies and people out there trying to argue that point. So I'm not trying to argue that point.
That umbrella should be extended
Yes.
after you retire. I think that's what's most frustrating. The government should be covering these costs after you leave the service. I know there was some talk, it's been going on for some time now, that veterans, rather than having to go to the VA, should get vouchers that would be roughly equivalent to the funds they would get going to the VA. But with a voucher, you can seek out whatever private medical help you wish. So
Yeah.
you're not tied to the VA. Are you at all tapped into whether there's been any progress? They've been talking about it for at least a decade now, but as far as I know, there's no such legislation has passed. Do you know if there's any progress on that? If it's an idea that's still being advanced?
I'm not aware of that. I know that when I go to the VA, if I need to go to a specialty clinic, they outsource it, and I can go see a civilian practitioner for whatever that issue might be. So they're pretty good about that.
Okay.
The Biloxi VA, they're very solid. I mean, they're a good VA. They do take care of you, and then if you want something specifically, it's not that difficult to message your doctor online, va.gov, and then within a couple of days you get some kind of response from them, and they'll send you to treatment, especially with guys like with the situation that we're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
So they're helping. Could they help more? Probably. Could I ask for more? Probably as well. But one of the things with brain injury like this is a lot of times you forget to ask for help. So that's one of the issues. Is I probably could get a lot better care for myself if I were able to ask for help more frequently than what I do. But I'm tracking along, doing good, and involved in many modalities of treatment that seem to be working pretty well for me. So.
Right. And I know you talked about the treatment for the TBI, but the secondary symptoms, such as your spinal deterioration and so forth, you're getting treatment for that as well?
Not adequate, no. There's a local hospital here where I go to their pain clinic, and mostly what they want to do with me is nerve ablations, injections, and those types of things in my spine. And I think over the last 6 months, my spine's probably just had a different level of degenerative changes that needs something more than that. So I'm not sure what the answer is to my spine. It's just I'll lay down a lot and take the pressure off of it. That seems to be about the best thing that I can do with it.
What are the first steps toward realizing your goal of getting the nonprofit started?
The funds, raising the funds to go through the legal aspects of it, get that set up, get an account set up to where I could solicit donations, and then just start bringing in donations. And just being proactive at that point. It's really just the legal side of it. I'm not a lawyer for sure, so.
Oh yeah, but that's easy. Believe me, that's become very easy to do. As a matter of fact, you can do it online. You can outsource it to services who will do it online. But the reason I ask is because that's one thing, because we want to help. We don't. It's one thing to talk, but we want to do something for you and for others. So if we can help in that regard, I know that we can. I mean, once you get these, I can give you, Raul actually would be the expert on getting that set up. And And then, of course, you just need it publicized, which is part of what we're trying to do here. But
Right.
there are other platforms that are, of course, much bigger that, with the connections everyone here has, provided you don't have any problem with it, we can try to get you booked on some of these broadcast platforms that could really get the word out. Because this is something that people, Americans have pretty good hearts, but they need
Right.
to know. But they need to know that the problem exists, and this is something people. I think PTSD is been raised in the public consciousness and awareness lately, but the traumatic brain injury of the kind you're discussing, I don't think people know about it. And if they did, there'd be a lot more, uh, generosity, support, material help.
Yeah.
So, let's try to do that.
Yeah, I'll tell you, that group of people that's on that board there at Avalon, right? Avalon Action Network. I mean, that's a stellar group of individuals, man. I mean, that gives an enormous amount of credibility to the fact that this is real, right? I mean, people of that magnitude, like a Bernie Marcus, like a Gary Sinise, like Froberg, the Medal of Honor recipient. They wouldn't be lending their names to this whole thing if it wasn't real, right? So I think in terms of your nonprofit, I would sort of, I don't want to say lean, but I mean, you can reference the fact that that there's people that are out there that are very serious people that have already made some big inroads, but there's still some gaps left in terms of covering certain expenses, and that's where your not-for-profit comes in. And as Harrison alluded to, I mean, nowadays, that's relatively easy to set up, digitally. Even until it reaches a certain size, the paperwork involved in terms of IRS type of stuff is really quite minimal. And there's solutions for all that stuff that really don't cost a whole lot of money, right? And can get you off the ground. The real trick, of course, is raising the money, right? I mean, but you sort of have to do it in two phases. You have to raise the awareness first, right? Which I think you're already doing, okay? And then from that, find the right people to, help you raise the money, type of stuff, right? And oftentimes the easiest thing for that is to either go to the corporate community or find good-hearted folks with deep pockets that are willing to say, hey, yeah, let's get this off the ground, type of stuff, right? So
I haven't had GoFundMe yet. GoFundMe would be also another outlet.
I don't know, man. GoFundMe is more sort of a one-shot deal. I mean, that's for people that listen, this guy just died. Let's pay his funeral expenses.
Right.
For something like this, you want to have, and like I said, it doesn't involve a lot of money, but you want to have a not-for-profit, organization set up. It costs maybe $60. I hear in Florida it costs me, I think, like $60 or $80. There's a non-for-profit scholarship fund that I'm responsible for that I think we pay $80 a year for that thing. We've raised money for it. The money's managed by a brokerage firm. We have a bank account. And once a year I file a simple IRS form 990, which is a little card about this big. That's about it. So it's not as complicated as it sounds, Anthony. But you do want to have something to be able to show people, and I think you've got a track record already, which in my mind is and a personal experience, and you got skin in the game. I mean, so that's really a lot of the stuff that you're speaking with authority. You obviously know what the hell you're talking about. You're a quote unquote victim of repetitive TBI, right? So it's very real to you. and you're going through the treatment. You've seen where the gaps are, and you're trying to fulfill a need. I mean, that's as those are all very powerful things in your favor. And yours is a noble cause, man. And like Harrison said, Americans are extraordinarily generous, but they need to be educated, right? They need to find out about these things. So we can talk offline afterward. And we're with the hour, put up on an hour here. We probably should be wrapping this up at some point. But we can talk offline afterwards. And to the extent that I can be helpful, I'm more than happy to do that.
Yeah, that certainly goes for all of us. I mean, we all have our different levels of expertise and our different connections, and I think I am certain that among the four of us, we could not only help you make this happen, but really give it some momentum.
Oh yeah, that would be amazing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really good. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll commit to that. Yeah, it's an honor just getting to know you. Marcus, thank you for this introduction. And thank you both for having served in this capacity.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're kind of unsung heroes.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that, once again, thank you to our panel. Thank you, Marcus, for bringing Anthony to us, and thank you so much, Anthony, not just for your service, but for the valuable information that you've given out tonight. And we will continue work on this, and hopefully be able to help in some manner. And for all of you out there that are watching, just remember to like and subscribe if you like what you've been seeing. And with that, I wish everybody a good night.
Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you, now.